No, I don't have my gavel with me. So.
You want the gavel?
Okay. Really? All right, we ready to go? Start the music. Okay. All right, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is the Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting on 2/21/23. The first thing we're going to do is look at some administrative business. We do have one public hearing, and then we have 3 application reviews that we'll go through, and it's a short agenda tonight, so here we are. So with that in mind, the first thing we're going to do is look at the meeting minutes from 2/7/23. Did everybody get a copy? Did I get a chance to look at that? Yes.
Are there any edits or changes that need to be done to that? Any
No.
discussion?
Nope.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from the planning board meeting of 2/7/23. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So those minutes are now approved. So the next thing we are going to do is we're going to look for some updates from the Ulster County Planning Board, Village of New Paltz, Board of Trustees, the Environmental Planning Board. Is Will Murray here? Okay, because he's not here, we will move on then. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move to the public hearing. First public hearing, actually the only public hearing, is PB 2301, 218 Main Street. Oh yes, public comments. Do we have any public comments that were raised? No, I didn't see that in my notes, so thank you for that. So we're going to move then to the public hearing of PB 2301 218 Main Street. So I'd like to get a motion to open the public hearing. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone here or online that is here to speak to PB 2301 218 Main Street? So hearing none, I want to get a motion, please, then to close the public hearing for PB 2301 218 Main Street. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is now officially closed. So the next thing we're going to do is move on to application reviews, and we are going to start with PB 2301 218 Main Street. Just to review, this is an application for amended site plan approval to add a new door and stair at the rear south of the existing office building, and a new door on the rear elevation to access the basement storage. We previously granted the applicant approval for 1,430 square foot expansion of the building on July 5th, 2022. So what do you have?
So we responded to the comments we received the previous time, and have the new stair clouded on the site plan here. The table is updated just to make sure we're showing, the maximum, the approved prior time, and the proposed lot coverages. And then similar to the site plan, the elevations are clouded, just showing the scope of the work that is different from the prior approval. There were a couple minor comments on the short form environmental form, and so those were updated and sent in as well. And so we don't have anything else at this stage.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Great. So I think it all looks good. I didn't see anything on there that caused me any question or worry. It's all pretty well based on the comments and the actions that we took, and the things that our attorney had for you that you've gone through and completed. we are going to be limited tonight on the action that we can take. What we're going to do is we're going to look at getting a motion to authorize a drafting of a resolution of approval. However, Ulster County Planning Board has not come back with comments on this, and we have to wait for them to give us comments or for the 30 days to elapse from when the referral was sent. And once that 30 days has elapsed, if they have not made any comments, then we can take action to go ahead and approve it.
Okay.
If they come back with comments, we'll review the comments. Frequently, the comments are that there's no comment.
Sure.
But we have to wait until we get that, or that the 30 days goes through.
Okay.
So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to ask for a motion to, well, first off, if you have any questions, any comments that we need to work on with them at all? Nothing?
Can we advise on when the 30 days will expire so we can maybe prepare the applicant, whether?
I think by our next meeting they will have
That's what I
expired.
was hoping.
Yeah.
Great.
So we should get something back. When is our next meeting? It's the first week of March.
Yeah, so it might be next Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I'm
No,
curious.
our-
It's March 7th.
So March 7th. I'm sorry?
I'm just curious about how long you expect the construction to take.
I know the owner is very anxious to get going, so she's already engaged with different contractors for some of the different scopes, so they're lined up and ready to
Okay.
go. Yeah, I don't want to
Shooting on.
speak for,
shooting on.
definitely more than 2 months, but yeah, I don't want to commit to, it's not, I don't think it's like a year-long project or anything, but yeah, there's a good amount of site work and, reconfiguration of the space, but it all depends on how quickly they get in there.
I was just asking because you're right next door to the,
Right.
so I was thinking, maybe you want to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, I don't have a timeline from contractors on the duration.
So the Ulster County Planning Board, we believe, meets next Wednesday.
Okay.
So by the time our next meetings, that would be the 28th, that'd be March 1st.
Yep.
And so March 1st is when they are going to meet. And based on that, with our next meeting following, then we should have information back.
Okay. Great.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion to authorize our attorney to draft a resolution of approval for PB 2301 218 Main Street.
So,
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
I,
Aye. So they are going, we've just authorized the attorney to draft the resolution of approval. That should come back to us by the time we have our next meeting. And if the Ulster County Planning Board has come through and there are no issues, then what will be done.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Appreciate your help. Thank you.
So the next item on our list is PB 2302 145 North Chestnut Street, KES Chestnut Properties. So for everyone to remember, this is an application for a site plan and special use permit to demolish the former Agway and construct a 73,000 square foot building along with 3-story mixed use building, 68 residential units,
It's up to you guys.
2 studios, 42 1-bedrooms, and the like. It's going to be on North Chestnut, New York State Route 32 in the NBR mixed use district. As far as seeker is concerned, we classified this as a type 1 action at our January 17th meeting. We also declared our intent to be lead agency and circulate a lead agency notice upon the receipt of a revised environmental assessment form. There are still some revisions or items to clarify in the AEF that should be done prior to circulation, and we'll go through some of those, but I believe you have the list from her.
Yeah, so we did the original list. We responded and
Right.
submitted a new AF. We do not have a new list.
Okay, she has quite a few items that we discussed today that need to go through. I'm not going to read each and every one. There are some highlights.
Because I won't be able to answer them.
Right. It's an effort to also keep the board awake.
Yeah, that sounds
Um,
good.
So we'll go through some of those. Autumn, our project manager, can get you the detailed itemized list of those items that you can then go back and approach. And then at our next meeting, hopefully we'll have enough resolve that we can press forward.
Okay.
So just to give you some indication, what we need to probably, let's start with this. Let's listen to your updates and then we'll start in on the issues that we have.
That sounds good. So I think you went through most everything, at least from an overview standpoint. Few things that have changed since the last time we were here is we had a little bit too much amenity space on the first floor. So we actually were able to add 5 more apartments on the first floor that surround the green space there. No expansion of the footprint from what we previously showed. Really just worked within the existing footprint, and we still have enough parking that covers even that additional without a waiver or anything. So that stayed the same from that standpoint. We did receive a letter from SHPO that they indicated that there was no impact in their opinion. We have a number of studies that are still in progress that we're really hoping to bring to the table at the next meeting. So we're working through quite a bit there on the wetlands, actually the geotech report, the SWIP, of course, that'll have to be worked through with your engineer as well, wetland habitat report. So all of those items are in progress, and we feel within the next month we'll have those ready to present. Traffic study that's being done as well. So that'll be something that comes along in due course. The other thing that's changed on the plan is we did show a connection to the rail trail proposed. So we'd like to do it. I think we would like to do it, but just need to see how that's how we're able to do
I have a
that.
question about that. To what degree is the Wallkill Valley Land Trust and the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail Association, to what degree are they involved in connections to the rail trail? Because the other developer of the hotel was saying that they were making some restrictions on them. So I'm wondering if they have some sort of a policy that they could share with us, or whether they could comment.
I don't really know, but I think it seems to be at their discretion, which is why, the hotel was so frustrated because they haven't gotten like a straight answer. But I'm not sure.
I think,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the big distinction between what the hotel is looking to do and what the connection to the rail trail is that the hotel was actually looking to build on the land trust land. The extension of the deck and the additional parking was actually, it required an easement from them to build on the preserved land, as opposed to a connection to the trail from a property. So I think that I still don't know if they have a written policy and whether these are one at a time decisions, but I think that's a really big distinction between what the hotel asked for and what this would be.
Oh, sure. The one thing that I can see that somewhat in common is the idea of a sidewalk. Because I think in both cases, both developments lack adequate pedestrian access unless there is some kind of a sidewalk. And there's absolutely no sidewalk on the side of the street that the development is planned for. Between that connects, I made a map and drew it. If there's no sidewalk at all. There's a sidewalk on the other side of the street,
Yeah.
but there's no bicycle pedestrian access.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking about is that you have, like with Zero Place, they have bicycle pedestrian access to the development. But they don't have it going through. They tore down the footbridge. That happened before I was on the planning board, but I feel like it's important to have the capability for through traffic between Route 32 and the rail trail, and also to have a sidewalk on 32. Otherwise, you've got sort of this disjointed car-centric situation. And I think that part of what we're doing is, encouraging the reduced use of fossil fuels in whatever way we can in order to better the community. And so that just, I'm not sure what progress, or whether you have to ask them permission or their approval in some way for access.
Yeah, we do. That we know. The only thing we've heard on the access is that it's discretionary and they don't want too many.
They
So
don't,
that's
don't want too many.
too many,
points.
like from each property going across, but we don't know what that means.
One consideration is that, one of the things that Zero Place did is had a public restroom available.
Hmm,
And that I think makes a pretty strong argument as to why it's really a valid location.
Right.
Without a public restroom, maybe like slightly less validate, but I don't have an opinion on it.
We
Just-
feel this would make sense from their perspective when we've got, I mean, do we have 86 units?
Well,
68
actually,
units? Yeah.
if you look at it, once you've gone past Mulberry Street, there's no other connection to
Right.
32.
Well, and
until you
that's
get
actually
all
the
way to
thing.
Lucy's.
Because we're also at the very edge then of the village, which I think
Right.
also plays into it. So we feel confident that it just makes sense from this point, but.
Have you had, excuse me, have you had many discussions with them?
So LRC has, I personally have not, so I don't know if they extended those conversations, but so we've already been working towards
Would
it.
you ask them to bring us a summary of those next week? I think that would be good so that we can kind of determine the status and see how we can assist in the resolution in case
It's even
there's.
encouraging.
So how
Yeah.
many apartments are you talking about total? again?
68.
So, the other question I had was if you've got that many apartments, I mean, would you be considering that some of your tenants might have children? Because you don't have, you've just, there's a gym or a coffee shop or something, there's no like playground.
We do.
equipment.
Yeah, so we haven't designed any of the outdoor pieces, but we have green space there, which is intended for
You're
that.
going to put some playground equipment.
We're going to put something, I don't know exactly what it will be, but yes. Yeah, the ownership hasn't decided yet on that.
I do want to acknowledge your earlier point too, Rachel, about this question around pedestrian flow in the NBR from what this would be the most northernmost location to the remaining locations in the NBR. And right now it's not addressed, and I know it's kind of no one's responsibility, but everybody's responsibility, but it's certainly an open item.
So will there be enough parking, assuming that the majority of the rail trail access is going to come in the afternoon and on the weekends? Is there parking that people outside would be able to access in order to gain access to the rail
Not
trail?
currently, not currently. We have 112 spaces, and I believe we need. Yeah, I believe it's 112 and we need 105
Mhm.
to comply, so. I mean, technically, I guess you could say there is, we're not intending to have designated spaces that are for a certain apartment or something like that. Because we have enough. But that's something to consider.
Okay, so let's just kind of go through some of these rather quickly because she will get you this, our project coordinator will get you a bunch of this information. Just, you were talking about the EAF, I think this in page 14 indicates it does not need a height variance. The EAF Part F supplemental information indicates it does not need a height variance if the building was 35 feet. Zoning summary table should be updated to indicate the proposed height is 35 feet with a footnote explaining the height with parapets.
So that's what we were wondering, how to explain that in that. Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll do that.
So you'd have a footnote explaining the height with parapets is up to 40 feet, 8 1/4 inches per the village code. Then there are some revisions to the EAF that are noted here, such as if any variances are required, then one of the sections needs to be answered yes as opposed to no, and should indicate any variances that are needed from the village ZBA. You note the height variance is not needed, but a side yard setback may be needed since the proposed side yard exceeds 15-foot maximum permitted. Again, these are all going to be part of it. Yeah, maximum, not minimum, maximum.
Got it.
So we're going to ask Corey to advise us if the side yard variance or any other variance is required. Then it talks about some items that weren't completed, providing annual electricity demand in kilowatts per hour per year. So there's some technical details here. Nothing that's truly substantive. Habitat report should be submitted and should be reviewed by the planning board's consultant. So we're going to try to make a motion here in just a few minutes to have our consultants engaged so that it can kind of flow seamlessly and you won't have to wait another week to get that going. And that way they can be studying the same information. Talks about different counts that might not be accurate or correct. Spaces provided. So the parking summary table indicates 104 on-site spaces, but the numbers provided in the third column add up to 94, not 104. Again, it's going to be this list of details that we'll get you to go through. When we come down kind of to the bottom of it, it talks about affordable housing, habitat reports, things of that nature. But most of all, we're going to have Corey to perform a zoning code review for compliance with the NBR district regulations. That's ultimately what all of this will end up being, so that if he says, yes, it all conforms, then things can roll forward. So what I want to do now is I want to make a motion to have the application reviewed by our consultants, specifically DTS Provident, Capital Environmental, and Brinier and Larios, our village engineer. So any questions before we move to get that motion?
Yes, I would like.
Sure.
If you look at the property, it's obviously not like a endangered turtle or eagle habitat, but it was colonized by beavers. It's pretty obvious. There are numerous trees and chews. And the fact is they do attempt to colonize that area every decade or so. And they really only require 2 feet of water in order to be happy. And it's really not an incredible feat of engineering to coexist with them. And I'm wondering if I could get a commitment, as we did from the other developer, that if the beavers should return, that you would not destroy their dam or discourage them from coexisting.
Cannot imagine the ownership would say no to that, but
Okay.
yeah.
I actually remember when they were sitting here, they said, yes, that you'd mentioned that earlier, and they said, yes, we actually, in fact, I think he said, we like beavers. We want them to thrive.
Sure, that was that and not the other one.
Oh, I'm sure it was them.
Apartment building ones.
No, I'm sure it was them. Oh, yeah. Well, no, it was the other apartment building. You're right. It was the other apartment building. So
Okay. Yeah,
again,
There
I've
was
bring that up.
there was more,
farther down towards their development.
there's actually more beaver activity.
Must be down this after
It's
the,
between the rail trail and your property. You
Yeah.
can't miss it if
Between the
you're
rail
down.
trail.
Yeah, and there are chews. You can go and look at them.
so we'll bring that to
If
the.
you can just bring that up to the Kindle so we can get that taken care of. Anything else we want to go over? And thank you for correcting me. It was the one right next to it.
Guys, 2 questions.
Sure.
So with Corey, should we reach out to him or will you reach out to him on the
We'll
variance?
reach out to him.
You'll reach out, okay. Just so that we can fill in the EAF out correctly. And the other thing that was, I believe it was requested last time, we did a view shed also looking from which way is it? South. So coming into the village, down a little bit. So that was part of the application package as well, the most recent. So if you take a look at that, you'll be able to see that, which I believe was one of the concerns, because that's actually as you enter the village. So that was a part of the latest application. Just those 2 things.
You have a print copy of that?
Yeah, we do. That is actually 2 things were requested. One was
Just flash it for a second. It's an oohs and ahs.
Wow. I don't know if you get oohs and ahs, but so this is the current image.
Mhm.
And there is the building as it sits. We dashed in the line as it goes behind the
Right.
house, so that you can understand that's the building footprint as it comes down from that vantage point.
That's not the color of the exterior, right?
Well, no, not in the print. You'll see the color is what we showed last time.
Yeah.
Which is this. So these are the buildings. So it's the bluish gray,
So they'll do a rendering that shows the actual design of the building from that same angle. or something?
so that's actually this just further down. So we can continue to go down, but it is that view. The other thing that we did, because it was requested the rear, just to give an understanding of what that, to make sure from the rail trail side of things, we're keeping the very same appearance. So this is, our parking lot in the back.
Mhm.
And then, so it's the same, we've got, this is basically the main entry for the residents. So from that, so it's really not the back of the building, by any means. So that design wraps really all the way around.
And the 5 new apartments live in. this
So they're
part of
in
the beach or
this, they're in that
They're
little
interior.
notch. Yeah, they're all interior. And the space that's the amenity space for all of the tenants, that is the green space, is in that courtyard as well. That courtyard. Exactly, it is 118 feet by 51 feet.
Okay, so that building is canted
20,000. Yeah, so this was
from the front.
when
you're
we
looking
had our.
Down,
I'm sorry.
and from the front, you're looking into the front.
Yeah, this is
32.
32.
Okay, got it.
So this was a discussion we had with
Right.
Tim and Corey originally, when we just had a discussion on the height, so that we could confirm a few things, and they said, hey, you got to get this lined up with 32.
32,
So
so that's
we
what it's doing. I got it.
told them that.
Interesting.
That's why we did it.
So the courtyard, I can't, is that,
It's right here.
they have, the tenants have access to it? Can we?
Yes, this
Okay.
is the 3rd floor.
So they would be able to, say, put a little slide or plastic pool or something.
The tenants have full access to it, so. This gives you a little bit better. So this is the courtyard. Here is an outdoor covered area. That's vestibule. This is where we've got bike storage. So essentially all their bikes will come in here. This is their access in and out. And it's actually separated off from the commercial space that's on the other side. And that's actually why we thought, we had amenity space here, but we could wrap this because really it wraps around the courtyard. That's for tenants.
And the face of the building on that side closest to you is going to be facing the rail trail.
That's correct. That's correct. And that is the residential, the other view that I just. That is to the rear.
Okay.
Whoa.
I don't remember now. I remember when we were originally formulating it, they were trying to limit franchises, like the Five Guys or the Burger King or something like that, moving into building. And does that still apply? Or they
You know, I
wanted
hadn't
that
thought about
applied? I
that
don't
for a
remember.
long time.
I had thought about it, because I thought, here we are, like they're worried about the Five Guys and CVS, when they decide to put one in here.
That's interesting. I thought there were restrictions
I just
from
think it's
back when Adam West was,
Jason.
Jason West. Adam West, Jason
That would
West.
have been really cool if that.
Batman.
I Me too, but I just don't remember what the final result was or where to find it.
I don't know that it's in the code unless it's
No.
a more obscure reference that I
Yeah.
can think of.
Look it up.
That's not their intent, but I don't know.
Well, their intent is not retail
Yeah.
or servicing.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so what we're gonna do then is what I would like to do, please, is I would like to get a motion to have this application reviewed by our consultants, including DTS Provident, Capital Environmental, and Brinier and Larios, our village engineer.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this is now going to go to them, and hopefully within the next couple of meetings, we'll be able to coordinate the two studies, because this area has been studied quite a bit, so it should flow fairly rapidly. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, just a quick question then on when we adjust the AF. Once that goes back, she reviews it and it says it's okay. We still will wait to then, we'll have to have another motion to circulate at that point, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
And we'll send you all these
That would be-
items.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
lots. So you'll get a fairly,
Fortunately, I don't fill it out, so that'll be.
Yeah.
It's like-
your team
That's
will,
right.
will get this here fairly rapidly. So, okay,
All right,
very good.
excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good evening.
Next.
So next we are moving to PB 2303 98 North Chestnut, New Paltz Bus Depot LLC. Application for a site plan and special use permit for a retail business not otherwise mentioned for a proposed approximately 2,286 square foot cannabis dispensary. Property consists of a 1 acre located along North Chestnut Street in the NBR district. This is the old Stewart's building. So just a few things that we're going to do is we're going to listen to the applicant's updates. We're going to discuss some of the issues that are noted below. Not quite as extensive a group of piece of information as the previous applicant had. However, there are notes that you will need to receive if you haven't already, and be able to go through those. Then we are going to probably need to, until we get that back, we really can't set a public hearing, but a public hearing is going to be required. So as soon as we get those back, then we can set a public hearing and keep that ball rolling forward. Okay. So give us your updates.
So in response to the questions raised by the board last time, we amended the site plan to show the bicycle parking, to show the existing parking spaces and the proposed parking spaces, to demonstrate that the prior Stewart's lighting plan is compliant with the current code. We got an engineer to opine on that, and that letter is attached to our response dated February 6th. We also supplied the village with the SUP standards set forth in the village code. And essentially, we're trying to use a prior traffic study and the information, the calculations used therein to try to establish that the 24 parking spaces that are anticipated in this will meet any requirement regarding peak period use during the operation of this new business. And we also attached, just for relevant information, the number of transactions that Stewart's did on average in 2020, which was quite significant. So this is a site that really is a well-established commercial site. It's not a mixed-use site where you have to worry about competing parking uses from residential and commercial people. This is in and out, just like the Stewart shop was.
Right. Okay.
Attached also is the landscape plan that Stewart submitted
Okay.
in 2009 that shows, mature landscaping and details the trees that are there and the separation between more yellow and the parking lot in the back.
Okay. So let's go through a few things here. And again, these will all be provided to you in a
Right. Anything.
Yeah.
probably best not.
Okay.
So the revised site plan was blurry, difficult to read, possibly because it was scanned in with other documents. In the future, a separate PDF of the site plan should be provided from the engineer. Our board is going to need to confirm the lighting fixtures are shown on the site, review the lighting details when we get the next iteration of this, and design and located in such a manner as to prevent objection to light. Lighting plan prepared according to the Village of New Paltz outdoor lighting standards, including specifications, et cetera, et cetera. The applicant submitted a SUP narrative addressing the general SUP standards, the village code. The narrative should be updated as followed, and there are 3 of them. I'll just briefly go over them, but there's a little bit more detail. Add an explanation for item 3, as you have for the other items. Currently, the answer to item 2 is just no, so you need to elaborate on that a little bit more. Add a section addressing the particular standards in the village code for retail business not otherwise mentioned, which provides as follows, quote, such businesses shall be reviewed for its ability to function without negative impacts such as traffic and noise on neighboring properties. Off-street parking and loading requirements will be drawn from the most comparable retail activity for which standards have been established. SUP narrative should identify the standard and explain how it's met. So again, just a little bit more elaboration on it. So we're also going to need a section addressing the particular standards in the village code for retail business not otherwise mentioned. which provides as follows: such business shall be reviewed for its ability to function without negative impacts such as traffic, noise, et cetera, on neighboring properties. Discussion of off-street parking and loading requirements will be drawn from the most comparable retail activity for which standards have been established. Should identify that standard and explain how it is met. Be sure to include a date or revision date on the SUP. So a lot of just, they're not huge things. It's just, you need to elaborate a little bit more, flush it out. You've got the bones there, and now we just need to add to it. So the applicant has not provided a traffic analysis or traffic management plan. So what you would like to do is rely on the parking study prepared for the Zero Place dispensary rather than prepare a new parking study. And you've discussed parking calculations in the cover letter. So what we're going to need to do, because in discussion, in fact, let's have a little discussion here about using some of that data. This area has been studied fairly extensively.
Yeah, I don't see a reason to recreate the wheel. I feel like it's a waste of resources and money. I'm happy to, rely on a document that was just recently reviewed, but, is it necessarily fair to other applicants? They've never asked, so this is it's a new opportunity, but, I'd like to hear what you guys think.
I think it's, I just can't get over the fact that we have 3 applications for cannabis dispensaries within the same block.
Mhm.
2 of them are literally across the street from each other,
Mhm.
and the third one is 2 doors down. And I just feel like it's, they're not all gonna get it, right? Only probably one of them, I don't know. I know we're not supposed to be involved with that, but still, I feel like realistically, these guys should work it out somehow, I mean,
It's just about
Well, this is-
using
yeah.
existing documents.
Yeah, let's try to limit this
okay,
just to
I'm
the.
just saying, that's the elephant in the room.
Mhm. It is, and unfortunately, we're just going to have to leave that elephant alone in the room and hope it is comfortable until such a time as it can be discussed and petted and
Okay.
talked about. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Zero Place parking study was predicated on the original parking study that was very thoroughly reviewed
Mhm.
and then applied to the mixed uses of Zero Place
Mhm.
and its demand for parking and its impact on traffic.
Right.
And then when the Zero Place location proposed the special use for the dispensary, we were able to default to say, well, this traffic study's already been done for a business that would operate in that space. And we then approved, and then they offered to have a schedule only opening for services at their dispensary. And so that combination of interests, which is one, a pre-existing already approved traffic or parking study for that property, not for another property that happened to be located on North Chestnut. And so those were the circumstances on which we approved the Zero Place. One was that was already approved, that traffic study and that parking analysis for that building, and they agreed to have that by appointment only opening plan.
So
do
you think that analysis then is specific to
It's definitely specific to
that
that.
business, and it
looked
wouldn't
at,
have any application for a business across the street?
I don't
In
know.
terms of traffic that would be moving up and down, making turns, do you think that would be different because it's across the street?
They're not speaking about traffic coming up and down, making turns. They're wanting to justify the parking requirement. From what I read
No.
in your
No.
memo.
No, it's actually, the traffic flow through this property is actually better than Zero Place.
We exceed the parking requirement.
I know.
where we're currently in, so we're not talking about parking, it's more that there's a traffic study that you're requesting, and we're saying there's already one done.
Okay, well, I'm reading something that says, given the number of parking studies generated along the North Chestnut corridor, including the attached parking study provided the village planning board,
I think it just.
they seek to adopt the relevant data contained in the parking study in an effort to dispense with additional parking. And the entire memo refers to it being a parking study.
It should say traffic. So we can amend that to say traffic, but that's because you're not asking for a parking study, you're asking for a traffic study. and
Yes.
We're alluding to that traffic. Study.
Right, and then your memo continues to just explain that it justifies the number of parking spaces you have. Doesn't say anything about whether it's creating a justification for the traffic that might be generated by the store.
Well, the trip generation data defaults into a parking calculation to determine basically how much traffic that site could hold. So that's basically how that information is.
I think you're not distinguishing between the idea that the study explained how many parking spaces would be required and the study explained or addressed the potential traffic impact of it. And if you're asking for that zero place study to also account for what you believe to be the traffic impact of the use, then I think that needs to be explained, because that's not what's explained in what I read. And then I think we still should discuss whether that's a sufficient justification for the traffic impact, because in order for zero place to be approved, they didn't only submit, here's what the numbers would be, but they submitted a mitigation plan related to how they would prevent a disruption of the flow by virtue of an initial surge. And the other applicant also submitted a mitigation plan and some ways of addressing high traffic moments around it.
Are you referring to the Smitty's one?
Yeah,
Okay.
the other applicant. So I guess I'm providing some food for thought and maybe a long answer to the idea that the zero place justified parking, because that's the thing we looked at 5 years ago when zero place was reviewed and approved.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a one-to-one here. If what you're also saying is the zero place study should account for the traffic impact, then I think you also have to consider what your mitigation plan is, like other applicants have, in the event that there might be a surge in business at the opening. And I think it's only equitable on our part to make sure that we're asking each applicant to address that issue in their proposal.
Okay. How about this, as an idea? Why don't we ask the applicants to come back with a mitigation plan? Why don't we engage Mr. Holt and ask him if he feels that there is some application of the previous studies that could be used in this? And in fact, it might be something that we want to see for that area as such. And so if he agrees that yes, the study of the traffic counts, the flow are all going to be the same for each one, then that would be something that could be utilized by the applicant. But they would have to modify it to include things such as a mitigation plan. Just is that something that might be?
I think that would be a good bit of advice to get.
So, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wonder, I think I heard it said that no applicant that you all know of has tried to do this. Take another applicant's study
Right,
and just use it for their approvals
Well,
that you know of.
correct,
not that I know.
yeah.
Well, we don't own the study. I think we need to go back to the owner of the study and ask them if it's okay for us to
Well, I
use it.
think what they're referring to, because the document that they include is a traffic, it's a summary written up by our consultant, Carlito Holt.
Yeah.
So it's basically, and what I'm anticipating is.
Back up. It's a summary by, our
the village,
consultant
yeah.
reviewed the other applicant's traffic study.
Correct.
And they're going to rely on that summary, not on the underlying report, but on that summary.
On his, so it's like a 5 or longer document where DTS basically runs their own study to confirm what the applicant's consultant is saying. So if the applicant has their own consultant and says, this is our plan and it looks perfect, we have our own consultants who do the same things so that they can call them out.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, if
So
we
you
want,
want, then.
Mhm.
But isn't there a requirement in the code that the applicant must do a traffic study under certain conditions? Is that part of our law, local law? My gut feeling it probably is. I know our attorney's not
Yeah,
here.
I can't think of specifically where it is a requirement. However, we have required applicants who have, and it may be, I just can't remember if there's a specific section. But we have required applicants who have new uses, unique uses, large uses, to do a traffic study. For instance, one of the applicants that has come before the board is building 350 apartment units. And so we've asked for a traffic study that would include various intersections, traffic flows and the like. This area has been kind of unique because it has been undeveloped, and then Zero Place came. And I think we even required one of the applicant when he applied to build an apartment and retail in BR. I think we actually required a traffic study on his part for that. And then we required one for Zero Place, but I don't think that, I don't know whether it's an actual requirement by law, but it's something that we have asked for. And there's just a lot of data that's out there. And so I don't know whether it is equitable or proper to say, can they use this data that was generated by other people or not? And that's kind of what we're trying to
can I
discuss.
propose something? Because,
Yeah, I
you
just
know,
don't think it's fair myself.
Yeah.
I think that if an applicant is coming in for a special use permit, even though, yes, it was a retail space, let's get back to 600 trips. How many of those trips were people just getting gas, never parked? It's a transaction. They never went to the store. I went there myself.
that's a parking requirement, not a traffic. Okay.
I'm just using their number. They're trying to say that, this business was 600 trips, but those trips are not your trips at all. They don't even come close. They never went to the store. They never parked. They just bought something and left. But my point is, it is different. It is new. Yeah, it's a retail space, but it is different. It just seems to me that they should do a traffic and parking analysis just like everybody else and let our consultants review it.
Can I propose something, because it's just along the lines with what our attorney suggested? Let's float this to Carlito. If he says, I would never sign off on that anyway, then this is a moot conversation. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know that it is. Just because your consultant tells you that, yes, that's the way to do it, the board has every right to say, no.
No, I understand, but if he says,
Everybody
That's
can do
all.
but if he says from the,
He
if
says.
Carlito says, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, then we know not only is it's not even a possibility.
I
Yeah,
understand, but he could come back and say, yeah, I'm very comfortable doing it.
I know, and then we
That
have
means
this
nothing to us.
conversation.
It's fine, you're comfortable, but it's a policy decision.
It's
Okay,
not, it's not a legal question, and Terry, I very much appreciate your point.
Yeah. So, yeah, this goes beyond legal to, as you said,
Well, he
a
was
policy
asking
sort of
you to-
It's
decision.
a policy the board is going to establish and you can rely on it.
It's certainly a precedent, and it's
So-
certainly a norm that I think we have for projects of this type, especially something as unique as this.
Mhm.
And I think Carlito might, I know him, I don't know him. Carlito Holt might indicate that there's a unique location or position of this building that might be different and might need enough attention that we would request a study.
Mhm.
I think I'm definitely not in a place in this meeting now to say, oh yeah, we'll just use what they got and do it.
Okay.
But I think
Gotcha.
I think we should note what Terry's comment is, because it's connected to the comment I'm making,
Mhm.
which is it's not altogether relevant, especially not the Zero Place one, which was done under the premise of that
Right.
building, with that parking scenario,
Right.
retail uses that were pre-approved and all that. And then, you know, so I think that there's questions to continue to ask.
First, let's try to do something here. First, we got to define whether there is an actual law that requires us to do that. I don't think there is, but let's find out. And Autumn, if you can make a note, and tomorrow you and I can discuss that and try to figure that out. That's the first thing. And then I think we need to pass this question on to Mr. Holt and Provident and see if we can get some relevant opinions and information about. And then the last one would be that we should be prepared at our next meeting to discuss whether this is a policy that we want to require of each applicant, or whether we can get a blanket study and share information. So and of course, it would not be, well, we need to have that policy discussion in more depth.
Can I ask just a clarifying question in terms of the memo that I referenced earlier? It says the attached, it refers to wanting to use the attached study. And so the attached study that you're referring to, I think is what you were saying, right, Raquel? It's the DTS Provident memo from Carlito Holt
Yes.
from August that, yes, refers to the zero place development. Okay. And
I'm speaking mostly about like the data that's in the table in that report is essentially, well, I assume, but I can't assume. That's what I'm talking.
you know, there's another factor, which is that this proposal and this data was generated without any consideration for the potential for two other similar businesses located within 500 feet either, which I think is another question this board should consider. I don't know what the rule, what the law, the cannabis law is saying about proximity of multiple establishments in one. I think it came up in our last meeting. I don't think we would say you can't, I think we should check the law, but I think maybe it's buyer beware, because whoever's the first licensee might be the one who can land and then, but I think that's another consideration that we probably want to get an opinion
The
on.
justice affected applicants are gonna be awarded the licenses first,
Mhm.
and then the non-justice affected later on.
Right.
So I think you raise good points. There's not gonna be 3 cannabis dispensaries within a month, Joe. It's just not gonna happen. I think the state will have something to say about that as well. They are interested in having this roll out very successfully, so I don't think they're gonna cannibalize stores that they open for this business.
I think we probably would want to have something more definitive than,
There is a guideline by OCM that says that there's not gonna be 1 in 1,000 feet of a card application. But it's a guideline. They just closed, and the other applicant next door touched on this, both Kate and her specialist touched on this 1,000-foot requirement.
Yeah.
It's a guideline that they just closed the public hearing on. So they haven't finalized, but as of right now, that is a guideline. And I'm not gonna say that other municipalities are following guidelines, but there is some talk about that's what it's going to be.
yeah.
So 1,000, 1,000 feet puts everybody else out of the question.
What do you mean by that?
So
They're
one
not
of,
close to
if
each
one
other.
of us, one of the 3 gets a
Right.
card application, then no one else gets it.
Right.
They're that close.
And that's what I mean by it, maybe just like the applicant just has to be eyes wide open about the fact that,
That's not the board
Yeah,
needs to just look at the.
But I
the
mean.
use.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Hypothetically, if all 3 of them were, would you be able to coexist, all
I-
3
I
in
don't
that
know.
small of a space?
So I have a different, other than the business question, the other question is just, have we ever considered or is it our role to ever consider whether 3 businesses of the same type could be within that?
No, we don't get to make
regardless
that
of what
decision.
type of business it is.
Yeah, we don't get to make the decision of whether 3,
We'll leave that alone.
3 restaurants can open within 500 feet of each other. That's not
our,
So we'll
Purview.
leave that alone and it really becomes, if all three get approved, it depends
all
on
three get
who gets.
well, true. But, you know,
Yeah,
that we-
that's
we
not
don't-
our, that's not our
I know
Yeah.
that's not our responsibility, but it's still, we're human beings and this is
Yeah.
our existence, know.
well, here's what we're gonna do then. So we're gonna, we're gonna talk to Mr. Holt about the accuracy of the information. And then if it's accurate and could be used by all three, then we have to talk about a policy decision that Terry brought up about whether it's a policy that we should say everyone has to bring their own, their own picnic to the party. So that we don't, share data and everyone has to do their own study, and that way it's done in an equitable manner. And then we can come back. We can also ask if there's any guidance from the Cannabis Board on sharing information on things like traffic studies as well. So we can try to figure that out tomorrow as well when we sit down. And then we can come back and have a discussion of it. In the meantime, if you guys can get us a mitigation plan, how to handle the immediate surge over a 30-day period, with the idea that you will hit an initial surge, and after 30 days, that surge will then follow
I have
up.
a question. Why does the board get to assume there's gonna be a surge?
We are, it's not something that we are getting to do. It is an idea that was based upon experience of some of the other cannabis operations that we used as comparison. For instance, I went to several in Massachusetts, and they said first 30 days, so the first 2 weeks were nuts. After 30 days, it calmed down, and we're in a kind of a constant state where we get a constant number of customers and we know what to do. Their idea was not so much in terms of traffic, but in scheduling. How many employees for that first 30 days? How do they deal with that?
Was it the first dispensary there?
No, that's actually, if you,
Because the town, there's gonna be one in the town too.
well,
Really big.
this is, but the idea is that if it is a unique and singular business that has a high demand, the probability that it will have a higher participation rate in the immediate opening than it will a year after. And how would you handle that? Because it would impact traffic in this particular area.
So when the new source was built, did they have to provide a surge plan?
I don't know. I wasn't on the board at that time. I have no idea.
So, other businesses are not required to provide surge plans, and no one on this board, nor us, or even OCM at this point, can say who's gonna get the license at what point in time, or if anyone's even gonna get a license. So for us to provide a mitigation plan and us not know if there's gonna be one in the town, or one in Kingston, or two in Newburgh, because then if that's the case, then we just did this surge plan for no reason. And we came up with this mitigation and tied ourselves down to something that's irrelevant.
The answer is, you're right. You would have done a mitigation plan in the event that the circumstances would create an environment or a situation that your new business would bring on to the residents and the other business owners in the community.
Right.
You would have made a plan that we are responsible for asking for, because it is a response to a maybe likely, maybe possible scenario that we're responsible for studying in order to approve a business in the neighborhood.
But maybe not likely, and maybe not plausible.
Okay, you can probably decide not to do it, but I would have a hard time saying that it made a lot of sense for us to not ask you to address the idea that you might have a high volume of traffic in your opening period, and that we've seen it in multiple states and heard that it's a likely scenario. So I think you can decide not to do it, but it's our responsibility to ask you to do it.
If the board could provide us with other states that has told this board that there was surges, I'd be interested in seeing that. I mean, we're going off of,
Okay.
I just don't, you're asking the landlord to tie ourselves down into a mitigation plan that then limits the tenant within that 30 days.
I think the amount of time spent refusing to do a mitigation plan could be well dedicated to a simple idea of how you're going to manage traffic.
Let me ask you a question. Sure. So you visited a couple of dispensaries and learned about the initial surge
Mhm.
issue. From what I've heard, though, the only mitigation plan that I've heard about is that you have some kind of a scheduling technique or scheduling people to come in. Now, the state may not want that to occur that way. So has anybody discussed any alternative mitigation plan other than scheduling?
Even other applicants have offered alternatives to that.
Yeah.
So you could do that homework and figure out what might be some other ways to make the board comfortable with the idea that it's been addressed.
Because again, I mean, this site is unique in that it has proven trip generation or transactional generation per day. So it can handle volume.
Great.
You may have other sites that don't have that setup that they have there, as well as the proven history of the transaction. So I'm just saying that, you know, this site is unique. And for that reason, I think it may allow you to consider it as a site that can handle more volume than other sites.
Okay, there are, so the places that I looked at were in Lee, Massachusetts. There was Berkshire that I looked at. There was a place, and I can't think of exactly the name of the town, essentially where Rhode Island and Massachusetts meet. Those were the three that I spoke to directly, and in conversations with them, they indicated that there was an immediate surge and then it died down. For instance, the one whose name I can't remember exactly the location. What they decided to do in terms of their traffic management is that to speed things along, they routed them through the parking lot, and they would hold them until a parking space became available, and then they would allow them to go. While they were holding them, they would check their IDs, go through a lot of those preliminary aspects, ask if there was a specific item that they were looking for. They would then note who the individual was, this is what they were coming for, and they also had call-in, and so they could also determine if it was just a pickup, like a to-go order, so that they were then able to manage the flow of the traffic due to the limited parking spaces that they had. And that way they kept a lot, because they said initially they didn't have that plan, and the traffic went out of the parking lot and it went down the street and onto the interstate. But they said that plan actually worked so well that on Saturdays, Friday afternoons and Saturday afternoons, they would put it in place again, just because it would manage the traffic routing through there. And that's all they were trying to do, is to help keep the traffic from backing up into the throughway and across the streets in that particular town. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking for. We're not looking for anything that, I think Zero Place, and I know you want to add something here, but Zero Place went probably farther than we expected with spreadsheets and flow sheets and things of that nature. So all we're asking is, how would potential traffic be managed so that it would not create backups? And I guess we could talk to Chief Lucchese and see what his input is. And I guess we could also talk to the two open dispensaries in New York City to see how they've handled traffic and management, because mostly they're pedestrian, however. So we can get some information, and then we could make a judgment based on that. But
all we are doing, we're not making that a requirement that you go by that plan, but if you have that plan in place, it may make things run more smoothly and it may make it easier
Preparation.
in terms of preparation. It may make the special use permit a little bit easier to go through.
One other question on that, the three sites you did see,
Mhm.
were they in little shopping plazas or is there a
Well,
flow?
Interestingly, the one in Lee had been a former restaurant that was just kind of its site by itself.
Right.
And it was difficult to get through. You had to come off the throughway. You had to turn left, go across the throughway. There were a couple of traffic lights and you had to make a right. And I mean, it was just, but it was not in a plaza. It was a freestanding unit that sat. So and he said that they had heavy traffic for the first 30 days. And he says, now he said, it's normal. We know what to expect. There's Friday afternoon. He said, in fact, it's like a lot like a liquor store. Friday afternoon
Or a car wash?
or a car wash. Yes.
What's the population of those towns? Probably a lot more than New Paltz. New Paltz has tons of drug dealers or the selling.
Listen, I think,
And half of the population in this town are students and they're all underage and they all come around with fake IDs. They're not gonna go to the dispensary. So you're not gonna get that surge when you think you're gonna get in a big city. My opinion.
Okay.
And I think what you
Fair
were
enough.
trying to say before, and like, obviously, we can only talk about parking and traffic for so long, but I think what you were pointing out was even with a surge, I think that they're saying it's not going to exceed 683 transactions in a day, which is what Stewart was experiencing.
Mhm.
So, but anyway,
Nobody in New Paltz has trouble buying weed, in other words.
No.
I
Okay.
appreciate your comments. I understand what
Sure.
you're looking for. We can.
Yeah, and it's so let's start with that. So what we're gonna do then, Corey is gonna advise us also whether a landscaping plan prepared by RIA is required under the code. Because you're not proposing any new landscaping, it's mature landscaping, you're gonna let it be. So we're looking at that one as well. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk to Mr. Holt. We're going to determine whether we want to have because we're gonna have to have a policy discussion. We're gonna talk to our attorney a little bit about this. We're gonna see if there's any direction from the cannabis board on traffic and traffic mitigation and flows. I think we're gonna try to reach out to a couple of the dispensaries that are currently operating. And see what we can come up in terms of a reasonably informed decision.
Thank you for your input.
So that's really about all we've got right now. So until we get these things cured, then and the issues which you're going to be getting that once those issues are cured, we'll set a public hearing. And there we are.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on. Okay, is there anything else that we need to cover here that just anything at all that we think that we need to discuss before we go for an adjournment?
I don't know, I'm just working on a map.
Mhm.
I wanted to have, I started working on it, but I'm just, it's sort of crudely drawn. But just with all the developments in one map.
Mhm.
And I feel like it would be a good idea to look at something like this to see what's going on, because we do one apartment building here, one there, one there. We
Right.
do them all singly, but I think that if we're really gonna be planning, we should be looking at the whole.
I think that's a very good idea. So we can do something that's more comprehensive as opposed to,
Yeah, especially
Piecemeal.
when it comes with sidewalks and that sort of thing.
And I completely agree with you, but wouldn't it make sense to have one of our professionals do that? Yeah, I know it's gonna cost a few dollars, but I agree. I mean, this is, when you look at the amount of development that's gonna be in that half-mile stretch of
Mhm.
road. And I've heard that, the sidewalk comes up at every single discussion, as it should. There's no question about it. But I think And that's good. I'm not picking on you.
No, I know. It's
I
not
mean, I admire
that's
for
not
what you did, but wouldn't that make some sense to have a planner do that for us?
I think it would. Who could we get to get that engineer? Would Larios do that for us?
I think in the short term, it would be easy for me to set up a Google map with active sites that I can share with
Okay.
you and the public in general. Would that be
I
okay?
appreciate that, but, you know, I think if we can really focus on some of the particulars of it. I'm focusing on the sidewalk only because it's come up a lot, and
Mhm.
I'll be honest with you, it's got me interested in it as
Mhm.
well. My gut feeling is just driving up and down that road, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, I am a planner, I did planning for a long time. That sidewalk on the west side of that road is very complicated. Very, very complicated. The stream is one thing.
Mhm.
But you put a sidewalk down that side, of it, you're gonna lose some big mature trees. They're gonna go. Not because you're gonna cut them down, you're gonna cut the roots to put the sidewalk in. I saw it over and over and over again. My point is, why don't we take a minute, spend a little money, and really put together a plan for ourselves that show things like the street, the sidewalks where they are, the crosswalks where they are.
We have or we did have at one point, a fairly large map that had the different districts that were outlined on that map that was upstairs in the meeting room. And I'm wondering if we could have something like that where we could
Good
use.
start. Yeah, I mean, we need the zoning map.
Yeah. And that would
now
give
we
us,
need the development put into the zoning map.
can I task you with that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it myself.
No, no,
But
no.
I'll talk to the staff at City Hall
Right.
and
Because-
see what we can do to
And
put together.
because I would bet that map is still hanging up there. In fact, we could probably, after the
Alright.
meeting, take 5 minutes and go up there and
That's
find it.
fine. No, you don't need to. I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
I'd also be, given all the work that went into drafting and ultimately approving the NBR
Mhm.
code, I would be interested in going back to see whether there were any studies that might have gone into the design of the code and different considerations that might have been on the table at the time that was being finalized. It was about a 3 or 4 year process.
It was.
Yeah.
And so
there was some work.
there might have been some work papers that came out of that got to some of the points that are being raised too. Because the fact is, the code was written to do what's being done, but we're seeing it being done, and we're like, this is actually a fair amount of stuff happening in a very small amount of
Very
space.
Very
space,
small
yeah.
amount of time. Absolutely.
And then I think there's the water sewer engineering. That's the other big question.
Yeah, Blue may even have a map based on that.
You know, based on Zach's memo to us earlier today, the architectural side of all this.
Mhm.
You know, he raised some good points about what
Did.
this street is supposed to look like.
Yes.
You know, we don't want blank walls on that street. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And we don't, it was obvious the code was written so that they wouldn't be there. So let's hold the applicants to that, all that work that all those people put into. You know, I don't think we just say, well, you know, the cannabis industry doesn't want these places to be seen from the street. Well, our code is very clear what we want, you know?
Just add about that other application. I don't believe they need to make any changes to the building, period. I believe they were just focusing on landscaping for that application,
Right.
which would, just to your point about that side of the building, I don't believe they have proposed any physical
No,
renovations
they
to
have
the
not.
building. So
They have not. That was Zach's point.
Yeah.
Maybe they should.
Yeah, that's a discussion to have though, in terms of existing buildings where they're just doing an interior renovation as opposed to and an exterior that needs to be adjusted to meet the code and do the two go hand in hand. So all good discussion. So I'm tasking with that. Any other closing comments before we head out? Okay, well, I'm sure there will be plenty of emails over the next week or so, so I'll look for them. So with that, I would like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for your work tonight.
With the lights on.
You see
I
this?
just read.
It won't make it.
Yeah.
Dang it.